Oh, you damn right. Let's get a modcast going for a Tuesday. And it's a perfect Tuesday to have a modcast discussion because Steve Sarkisian had a press conference this week as we are headed towards spring football. Football never dies. It's always there. There's always some season going on. And right now it's prep for spring season. We're going to talk about it today. Obviously, your modcast crew, you know them, Anwar Richardson, Jason Sukamel, Alex Dunlap. I'm Chad Hastings. Let's roll through and talk about this. We sit here 172 days until Texas plays Ohio State, but it is not that far away from spring practice beginning, if I've got my days right. Well, we're exactly 2 weeks away, I guess, right? March 25th, I think, is when things crank up. So Steve Sarkisian meets with the media yesterday, kind of a recap of a lot of different things going on, the coaching staff stuff and the scheduling things, and is there going to be a spring game, or why is there not a spring game, and all those kind of things. So we're going to dig into it, get all the guys' opinions on what jumped out to them. Anwar, let me begin with you. You were there for the presser yesterday. I won't send you in any direction. What jumped out to you as you've had a day to kind of process? A lot of subject matter was covered. What's sticking in your brain on this Tuesday?
It's funny. I think the thing that sticks in my brain most is a line that Alex had in his recap of the story, which he of the press conference, he said the spring game would probably be dead in 5 years. And it's been like, it's such a small little thing, but I just thought about, I was like, I think Alex is right. Like, I do believe that. So hearing the explanation from Sark and him explaining, like, okay, his reasoning might be different than other people's reasonings, but no, just kind of the overall thought process is that, we're never going to see this again. And here's why, because if Sark, one of the things Sark said is like, look, we're basically onboarding 27 people, 22 high school people, the 5 transfers. Well, Jason and I kind of talked about this briefly this morning, but the number of kids who early enroll is not going to decrease. It's never going to go away. Like that's always going to be a thing. Every kid's going to early enroll. So just knowing that next year he's going to have 22 or more, that number, if that's the reasoning, well, every year will be a reason not to have a spring game, which is so hearing him explain why, even though kind of the things we've reported previously, but hearing the explanation why, and thinking like, okay, that thing is going the way of the dinosaur. We're not going to see that again. Even though we knew it was coming, even though it's not unexpected, just hearing the explanation from me and knowing like, oh, this won't be a one-off. This will never happen again. I think that was probably the biggest thing that kind of stuck out to me. There's a lot of things, but I found that to be really interesting.
Well, it is an interesting place to start. And Jason, the explanation he gave is one I wasn't expecting. I knew he wasn't going to talk about what Matt Rule did, and he took that out of the way. But I was a little surprised that he kind of went down the path he did. What did you make of that reaction about the spring game stuff?
It's funny because I thought you were going to ask like what stood out. That's exactly what stood out to me. Is I thought he kind of like, I don't say poked fun at Matt Rule, but he kind of did without mentioning Matt Rule by name. He said, there's a misnomer as to why we're not having the spring game. He said, people are going to tamper with your roster no matter what, right? But he said, their spring game, their last practice, if they had a spring game, would be April 26th. The portal closes on April 25th. So the numbers don't match up. The dates don't match up. So I thought it was interesting. Sark wanted to clarify. He goes, that's not why we're not having a spring game. Like some people have said, and obviously Matt Rule was the one that everybody talks about. And he's right. He said, people are going to tamper with your players and your roster no matter what. You're always going to have to combat that. His reasoning is, like Almar said, and it makes perfect sense, 27 new faces. They need every minute of every practice that they can get. They can't have a throwaway spring game where it's just, you go out there and have some fun. I mean, they need to be teaching these guys, all these new faces, every single minute of every practice. He even said, hey, we're going to, even how they operate their practices are going to be different. They're going to have, it used to be 1s and 2s going here and 3s and 4s going on another field. And they're going to now basically have everybody together. And maybe you don't give your starters as many reps in practice because you need to get these younger guys up to speed. He also mentioned that last year taught him, hey, you have to have everybody ready to play and get them early playing time. So I mean, they're going to be giving those freshmen and obviously the transfers a lot of work, it sounds like, this spring. And they're not just going to be standing on the sidelines watching. So, yeah, I thought it was interesting. I thought the fact that he made, I mean, nobody asked him why. He just said, hey, I want to get this out of there. It's a misnomer as to why we're not having a spring game. He didn't want people thinking he was worried about tampering, because he's like, that's going to happen anyways. His reasoning is more just about timing and just having every minute possible to get these new faces acclimated with the way Texas operates.
Yeah, Alex, let me get you to expand on. Anwar mentioned the line that you kind of threw out there, that we're headed towards a day where they will be dead. Expand on that a little bit. Like, for you, as long as you've been watching football, covering football, it does make sense that that's kind of where we're headed. Do you think ultimately this is going to be a good thing, a bad thing, or it's just the next thing?
It's the next thing. And it's I mean, I think Anwar and Jason have kind of brought it up a little bit, but I would say that whenever you just think about like the flow of practices, and you just kind of understand how football practices work, and especially in a time like spring, you can get more out of spring football if you treat it like this, right? Because if you think about what's happened in the past, it's always been first couple of weeks, you get in there, it's, just shorts and helmets the first day. Then the second day, what is it? Where they wear shorts and pads, shorts and shoulder pads and helmets.
Yeah. But that's an NCAA mandate. That may not change. That's always been an NCAA mandated thing.
Right. But right, I'm not saying that's going to change. And then I think for that first weekend, you have a Saturday practice. That's not a scrimmage. Then the next weekend, I think the next week's the first time we see them in full pads at some point. And then I'm not sure if it's that weekend or the next weekend. It's when after that you start getting scrimmages every weekend, with the final scrimmage being the spring game, with maybe the week before the spring game, maybe not having a scrimmage or maybe having it be thump. But during the course of a week, whenever you're leading up into a scrimmage type of setting, you have to have ramp up periods. You have to do things that are not necessarily the individual drills, the teaching periods, all this stuff like that. It takes you into a schedule that's different from, saying, a schedule that you want to optimize for more teaching of fundamentals, for more teaching of individual drills and things like this. And when he's saying, I got 27 new guys here, we're losing the whole offensive line. We're going to need to have more of those types of drills, as opposed to spending our week getting ready for a scrimmage wherever we just came out of however many games Texas played last year in complete tatters. Guys that we didn't even know were injured, right? You just heard about, like, oh, you haven't heard that, Leonga Lafau was playing through a bad stinger. Like there was stuff like that just, like, people, it wasn't even reported on, man. These guys were beat up. And at the point in time, whenever Sark was having to make this decision, I think it's not only the way that this was set to go anyway. I think he was probably thinking, like, man, these guys are beat up, man. I'm not going to take them through just this, what is it? Just a battering ram of all these scrimmages. It's like, man, it begins to be too much wear and tear. And I'd said before, we're going to start seeing guys sitting out a spring ball if they're going to do it like this. No one's going to sit out a spring ball if it's OTA stuff. Bunch of individual work, bunch of group work. And it's better for teaching and all the rest of it. And guess what? By the time we get around to the spring game, they're going to go out there, and CDC is going to probably set up Bevo Boulevard, and Arch Manning is going to be out there signing autographs. And they're going to open up a practice, and they'll give some team periods and stuff, and fans will think it's perfectly fine. It's like it wasn't like the spring game was this, edge of your seat, exciting game. All it is a team period. So I don't think it matters. I think if they view it as more efficient, that's what they're going to do. And I also think that the way we've seen with what college football is doing, especially in the Big Ten and in the SEC, in so many ways trying to mirror the NFL, it's like this is a natural progression of things. It's not going back.
Hey, Alex, from a selfish perspective, are you somewhat happy that you're not going to have to do a film breakdown of that spring game?
Oh, dude, well, come to think of it, yeah, I am for sure. And we need to figure out if that's going to be open or what, because I'm going to be I'm going to be up at the draft. So I'm trying to figure out if that's going to be open practice on Saturday or what's happening.
Have they said it'll be a practice or just or a fan fest?
Yeah, he made it sound like they'll have a practice and then a fan fest after practice, I believe, is kind of how I took it. Hey, am I the only one, guys, that I find myself yawning when I'm at spring? They're just boring. Am I crazy? I'm not going to miss the spring game at all, man. So
you're right, Onwar. I didn't even think about it till now. That spring game deep dig is a bear because you have to do it for 2 teams.
Yes,
that's true.
I remember like for year after year. That's why I was like, hey, for you, are you like, man, I'm so glad I don't have to spend days doing that crap.
Yeah. Jason, for me, spring games are like when you go to a wedding and they serve food, like actual food later, but at the beginning they're walking around with the plates, the trays that have a little something on it. That's what a spring game is to me. If it's not there, I might not notice. But
like in the chat, Rex St. Charles' spring games are boring. I kind of feel that way too, Rex, especially like the second half. And frankly, my MO the last few years is I go down there and I'm stalking recruits and taking pictures. And then halftime, I'm racing home. I don't even watch the second half, so I can call recruits when the thing ends. So I don't know, man. I'm not going to miss it at all. And
now, our guy Tom G says it's a good excuse to get to Austin. There's
Thanks
nothing wrong with that.
Tom, or I'll go meet you for a beer or something.
Excuse to get to Austin. What is he saying? Like Austin is the excuse to go to Austin.
Remember
who's ever had to talk themselves into going to Austin?
Tom, they're going to have all kinds of stuff set up. They'll do like a Bevo Boulevard. Alex said it. They'll do a Bevo Boulevard setup. Like they'll do, have that and the carnival stuff. They'll have drinks available. And then hopefully they pair it with what they would do anyway. Just let the fans, this was my idea from day one, just let the fans watch something you were going to do anyway that involves Arch throwing a football. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Look, and Tom followed up with this. Like, Tom, if your wife's like mine, she doesn't know jack shit about football. Just tell her there's still a spring game and come down anyways, dude. So.
There you go.
It's truly not that much different, right? If they just got to getting to watch a full practice, at least for me, somebody who's like I think of myself as like a practice. I love practice, right? I'm like a practice connoisseur. I take a lot away from it. I grew up at football practices, and I get more out of watching a practice than watching a silly vanilla spring game.
A taste of Arch. That's all you need. Just a little bit. You need somebody walking around with a tray and it's like, oh, what is that? Oh, what is that? Tuna? And then just quick bite. That's all you need.
Just answer Vivek B here in the chat. So he's saying, don't they still need live tackling in some practices? Well, yeah, they're going to go live at certain points, but they're not going to. They're not going to have. Sark said they're not going to have 120 play scrimmages like every weekend. Right. They're not going to start. They're not going to be doing that. And I'd imagine. And also, here's the thing. I don't know what he means by live. But there's some, with a lot of college programs, there's really not too much that is completely 100% live bullets flying live, right? The quarterbacks are never live. I'd say 75% of the time it's don't take anybody down. It's mainly thud, and I think the one time where you're closest to live is when the quarterbacks are out of the picture, and that's in the inside run drills. And, that's probably as close to live as you're going to get. But even in these team periods, man, they want guys to stay up. They can't have guys getting hurt, going through these practices. So they do need live work. But it's I would just challenge you to say, I don't think that NFL teams or college teams or stuff are really like that live very often at all if you're talking about just 100% game simulation live.
Yeah, and you got to think Sark at this point. I mean, he lost 2 running backs right before the season. I mean, like at some point he's like, all right, we ain't doing that again. Like I'm not going to just willingly walk into injuries after injuries and things to that effect. He talked about, the need to get guys. I think what was the thing, Alex? He talked about, I think it was like a point of reflection that he had. And I think he said his biggest thing that he remembered, he thought, thinking back, is he needs to make sure that these guys get more reps because of the injuries. And he used the Trevor Gooseby kind of example with that as well, that, that thing happens. Guys are getting beaten up. It's a long season, essentially. And you don't need to make it any longer. by putting yourself in harm's way in the spring and potentially, especially when you consider the number of injuries, like Alex said, whether they told us about it, we discovered it, or those guys just played through it. I think Sark at this point saying like, we're not going to do that again, not willingly at least.
It is the Modcast. Shout out to Daily and Black. They bring you the Modcast each and every week. Check them out, dailyblack.com, D-A-L-Y, as you can see down there in the corner. And Tom G, I see your super chat. We will start with you as soon as we give Specs a little love. We got over 400 people piled into that Specs chat. Jump on in and remember to get stocked up at Specs. Here's Lisa.
At Specs, it doesn't cost a lot to turn a good time into a great time, especially if you like saving money. From connoisseur collectors to aficionados of ale, you'll find bubbly bliss at any budget with a Texas-sized selection of world-class wines, rare spirits, craft beers, and more. So when you're getting ready for a good time, Specs is ready to make it great. Because at Specs, the fun starts here.
Shop Specs, low priced, amazing. Here's to you.
There are plenty of things in this world that can be duplicated. This is not one of them. There is only one. Tom G, $10 super chat. Any of the new freshman wide receivers standing out like Wingo from last year? Wide receiver is the area I am really concerned about, along with offensive line. Anybody got some good news for Tom on freshman wide receivers?
You know what, man? I have not. Weirdly enough, man, I've heard good things about all these guys, but I haven't heard about any particular one really standing out. It feels like some of the real standouts that I've heard about, that people are just like raving about one dude and not just, it feels like Anwar's probably heard from his guys more. I've just heard that the group looks good. You know, I've heard that they all look good. They're very excited about them. They are, it looks like after spring ball, they're looking to add one transfer wide receiver that can play slot. But other than that, they think that we feel like we're good. Like, we're good, man. These are studs that they paid a lot of money to them, you know? So I don't have one that's standing out. I think that's going to be one of the most interesting things in the spring is just to see. It's like, well, what are these rave reviews about? And is there anything that we can kind of parse out when we get our eyeballs on them as far as any separation there? I also think that over the course of the next week or two, with Arch Manning starting to really ramp up the stuff with the voluntary throwing sessions with these wide receivers, we'll probably begin to hear a little bit more scuttlebutt about these guys.
Yeah, I was going to
connections.
When I read this, Anwar, I thought probably the words "too soon" are probably a part of this answer. I can't imagine that, we've heard a ton at this point. Anything that you've heard, or is this going to be in the next few weeks?
I would say it's kind of too soon at this moment. They've only been going at it for a couple of weeks. So
anybody,
Tom G?
Tom G, thank you for the super chat. Any of you guys concerned about the DeAndre Moore injury report coming out of this press conference?
I was surprised by it. I didn't think, I was surprised. He lists off like guys who are going to be, now the exact quote was guys who are going to miss practice or at least going to be, very limited. And he said there's like 4 or 5 of them. And he lists out all the guys who aren't going to play. Colton Vasek got shoulder surgery. CJ Baxter tore an ACL on August, 15th or something. Just mid-August ACL. Of course he's not going to play. And then he just lists off DeAndre Moore. It's like, well, I thought DeAndre Moore had like a toe that he played through. It's like, what is this? What is this? He's not even mentioning Christian Clark in this list of guys, but he's talking about DeAndre Moore. So I thought it was surprising to hear his name mentioned like that. I guess I wasn't under the impression that he was one of the guys that was sort of like the main dudes who's going to kind of be out. At least not, when I think of those guys, I think about Derek Williams, I think about CJ Baxter. I would have thought about Christian Clark. Sark did say that Christian Clark is looking like he's farther along than most people would think. And you guys have probably all seen the photos of him front squatting that 275 pounds the other day. And obviously that's different than running and cutting and everything like that. But yeah, Sark says he's happy with where he is. I think with DeAndre Moore, it brings up an interesting discussion of Does that just mean we're going to see a ton of like Dalen McCutcheon in the slot this spring? Are they going to move some guys around to the slot? Because, Texas plays with 3 wide receivers 50% of the time. I don't see that being any less this year, considering the fact that the tight ends are so thin, right? So if they only go to 2 wide receivers with no slot wide receiver when they're 12 personnel, meaning 2 tight ends, are there 2 tight ends on this team that you're dying to get on? Are you dying to get Spencer Shannon on the field with Jordan Washington, Will Randall? So it's like, it feels like they could go 11 personnel more often this season. And if they are, DeAndre Moore's not out there to play the slot. You got Dalen McCutcheon coming in, who profiles as a really good looking slot wide receiver to me. But other than that, it feels like you would have to kind of, you have to make some interesting moves to say like, well, can you play Jamie French in the slot? Could you, Michael Terry, could he be some kind of big slot? Livingstone could be a big, fast slot. Those guys could be real, linebacker and nickel corner beaters up the seam, I guess. But it brings an interesting dynamic to what they're going to be doing in 11 personnel if DeAndre Moore's not out there, because he is your prototypical slot guy.
Yeah, Anwar, I wasn't expecting him to say that, and it made me think of the spring portal as well immediately.
I mean, look, to what Alex said, they'll add a guy in the portal. That's after when the spring thing is done. I mean, look, we know what Sark likes to do in the portal, and I don't think this all of a sudden Sark's going to wake up and say, you know what, I've had a lot of success in that transfer portal when it comes to receivers. I've decided I'm not going to do that again. Like, he'll get somebody that out of there, and it's a long time between now and well, I say a long time. When we get past the spring, there'll be guys who enter their name, and but so I think they'll get at least one person that's there that Sark will move in because he believes in that competition. I mean, clearly they believe in the guys that they have, but yes, I would be shocked. That I know they're waiting to see who jumps in the portal after the spring and seeing like what might be available.
Yeah. So kind of the interesting bit of the balance of some news you didn't think was going to be that bad, DeAndre Moore, and then news you didn't think was going to be that good that Alex brings up, the Christian Clark thing. It was kind of like, oh, okay. Thought he was further disconnected. And then like Alex said, it's such a modern thing when this is not the way it used to be when we all started, kind of covering football, but like, oh yeah, did you see the social media post where he's squatting 515? It's like, no, I didn't catch that. But that's awesome.
The Moore thing though, he did say, he said some guys will be start off slowly, but by week 3 or 4, yeah, he said, they hope to have them fully incorporated and just fully practicing. So that's not going to be CJ Baxter. That's not going to be Derek Williams. It's not going to be Christian Clark. So maybe my interpretation was like, okay, maybe he's talking about DeAndre Moore. He might be limited to begin with. So I didn't take it as it's a major injury, but we've heard the toe stuff or foot stuff. So maybe just brought along slowly for the first couple of weeks. But if he's not out there, like Alex said, there's not a lot of proven depth behind him.
If you guys want to jump in on the chat, feel free. Tej jumps in and says he hears French is the real deal. Remember to add that other F, Tej. It's a double F on French. And he is one of those young guys they're going to take a good look at.
They're all the real deal.
Yeah, I was going to say, right?
I mean, that's what we're hearing. I think they're all the real deal.
In terms of Vivek's question here, did Sark go into any detail about the position changes from some players? Anwar, correct me if I'm wrong. Was it just the Jelani McDonald one that he addressed yesterday?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think he was only asked that specifically, though.
Also to a slight degree, if you can infer that he said that Cole Hudson is going to be moving to center, although Cole Hudson has been a rotational piece along the interior offensive line at center and at guard the whole time.
That's right, because he was asked a combo question of center and McDonald. It was okay. Yeah. So it was addressed a little bit there. If you guys
and what he said for anybody, he was asking what he said. So the details of it were Jelani McDonald can play safety, he can play star, and he can play dime linebacker. And that they're doing some stuff with the dime packages right now. They're going to get in there and see about getting their best guys on the field. We've had the reporting at Orange Bloods about the position changes with Gilbo, the position kind of change or the kind of nuance that's coming on board with Trey Moore, the stuff that was and the stuff that's happening with Jelani McDonald to star. And I just think that's probably where he ends up. But I think that the point of Sark's answer was that Jelani McDonald's a real good athlete that can do a whole lot of things and gives them the versatility to, if you can move him around, it gives them the versatility to get the best five out there as far as your DBs. If you're in nickel, I do find it interesting. I did find it interesting, after that report I had in the war room last week about Ryan Niblett, it looks like they're going to move him to defense and have him play at the star. So that would kind of tell me that if you're having to move him over there, it's like, man, you probably feel like you're having some depth problems and stuff like that with Wardell Mack as the only guy if you're getting Gilbo out there. So it feels to me like, what Anwar heard from the start about Jelani to star makes the most sense, even though he was saying he could play safety star or dime linebacker. I think that's where he ends up as a star.
I mean, the thing is, Alex, they have, one of the things I've had before, talked to people before is that, there's some slight concern, not a panic, but there's concern about the DB situation and how they get that thing sorted out, back there, losing like obviously a Barron, losing a Makuba. And, one of the things I was told they want to see more competition back there. Jade Barron was moved to the cornerback thing. One person reminded me is like, that was out of necessity that we had to move him back there. We didn't know we had another guy. And so now, of course he ends up being, the best cornerback in all of college football. So, when you lose that, you're going to be moving things around and doing a lot of moving parts because they do want to make sure there isn't, a drop off or a slack off in that area.
If you guys want to jump on in and throw a super chat at us, it'll go right to the top of the list. We're climbing up towards 600 folks in there. We do appreciate you. We also appreciate our great partners around here, like the good folks at Rogue Shop. If you have not checked them out, it's one of the coolest websites out there. It is extensive. Take your time. Don't rush through the Rogue Shop website. It is incredible. You've heard the guys talk about all the different stuff that they've got for you, from gummies to the cartridges to maybe even stuff for your anxiety-ridden pets. Yes, it's true. RogueShop.com. Check them out. There's your QR code to scan. So we talked about some of the spring game stuff, a little bit about the injuries. Jason, let me go to you. Anything? What else is jumping out to you from what Sark had to say yesterday?
He touched on the new hires, but I really thought it was interesting on Akina. He was asked specifically about Dwayne Akina, and he mentioned like, hey, we've gone kind of the younger route with a lot of these new hires, and we felt like we needed a veteran presence, especially in the defensive backfield. So Dwayne Akina sounded like was a pretty obvious choice. I thought it was interesting. He said, Akina, he kind of commands respect. He doesn't like, not with his words, but just, he just walks in the room. You just respect him and respect his opinions and the skins he has on the walls and all that. Everybody, someone asked, I think, where you were there, but I think I heard someone ask specifically about Michael Huff. And he said, hey, it's not just Huff. And he rattled off all the other players that have been kind of singing Akina's praises. But I thought it was interesting. When Akina was hired, the first thing was like, man, was he 68, Chad? Is that right?
Yes, 68.
68. People were like, oh, he's 68 years old. Is he still going to be able to do what he did before? And I thought the way to hear Sark kind of explain it, and I was like, it actually makes sense. You got some younger coaches that you brought in. Maybe you can kind of have that veteran presence, that veteran set of eyes. That's obviously a lot of knowledge. So it kind of, after I heard Sark talk about it, I was like, that Akina hire does seem to make a little bit more sense than maybe I originally thought. I look at things kind of from a recruiting perspective in a lot of ways. Well, I was like, you've got some other young coaches, and Sark himself is a tremendous recruiter. So, bringing Akina's knowledge, his expertise, the respect he commands, that actually sounds like a pretty good fit to hear Sark describe it.
It's funny, he made that reference. I think, was it Seth Golden that asked the question, and he said some of these guys might have been in middle school, and I think Sark said maybe elementary school. When he coached there, and so you did talk about the importance of those guys. It is funny, when we're older, it's cool. It's cool when you mention guys like Michael Huff, But these guys weren't alive when Michael Huff played.
Mhm.
Like these kids don't have a working knowledge of who Michael Huff is. You can tell them who he is, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. But it's the same way they never saw Vince play. We did. We all have the memories. Alex has the memories, but kids don't. Alex's kids don't. None of my kids do, right? So it is interesting trying to blend a little bit of the old with a little bit of the new, using his experience. But you can't just lean on, well, this guy is the founder of DBU, and they're like, who? What are you talking about? Like, what's that? Like, I can Google it and chat GPT it, but I'm not quite sure who these guys are you're mentioning. So, it's interesting how he's going to blend the experience, but you just can't like just hang your hat on that. These kids don't know what the hell you're talking about.
One other thing I thought was interesting about the Akina hire, and I never thought about this. He said Blake Gideon leaves. Well, who did Blake Gideon learn how to coach from or learn how to play from? Dwayne Akina.
Mm-hmm.
So, Akina's coming in. It's probably a lot of the same lessons that Blake Gideon, coaching styles that Blake Gideon learned when he was playing under Dwayne Akina. So, just the pieces seem to fit. Sark said, hey, it's been a really smooth transition so far. And I hadn't thought about that angle. I was like, okay, that actually makes a lot of sense because Akina learned under Akina. He leaves, Blake Gideon leaves, and Akina comes in and, kind of some of the same teaching fundamentals.
Yeah. And Jason, he also kind of mentioned the contrast in the age thing where he talked about the younger guys that they brought in. But when you lose Terry Joseph, I didn't realize he was 50. And so you lose that
spring chicken. Yeah.
You lose that guy at that age. And obviously by bringing in 68, you definitely swing it back. We've talked about that part, but it's in his mind. He said, I felt like we needed the experience piece. And clearly, if you're looking for experience in the defensive backfield, maybe only Nick Saban would have more chops to talk about than what Akina does. So that was
younger at cornerback, right? At the cornerback coaching position, but then they get older at safety. So it's kind of flipped from where they were previous.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's interesting. If you guys want to jump in again, send us a chat, get us a super chat. We've had a lot of good chats already, and we will hit those super chats if they come in. Talking about Sark's press conference this week as spring practice is just about here. Alex, before I jump into anything that maybe was sticking out to me, is there anything else we haven't discussed that really stuck out to you? Obviously, you had your reaction piece on orangebloods.com. Anything else that you'd want to throw out right here?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting whenever Sark was asked about if he just was whether he turned down NFL interest and stuff. I thought that was kind of insightful. He didn't say no. Yes, I did. He didn't say that. He just said, look, he came to Texas not just to say it's like, hey, I'm a head coach again. Like he came to Texas with some specific things in mind. And one thing, I know we talk about these guys, rightfully so. We talk about them as players and stuff all the time. But I just thought it was kind of cool and kind of reflective about the shape of the program that the team GPA, he said the team GPA from the time he got there went from a 2.33 to a 3.27 last fall. And that was when they were playing an SEC schedule, an SEC championship level play and an SEC schedule, man. I just thought it's impressive, man. You could talk all you want about culture this and culture that, or, whatever else. I think that quantifying it by saying these guys are at UT, man, they got a collective 3.2. That's better. That's a better GPA than I had.
Right.
And I wasn't playing an SEC schedule at a championship level. So I found it impressive, just a little small thing.
Hey, by the way, it was Quinn that gave us the saying that I had never heard of, C's get degrees. When he was asked about his schooling and stuff, he did an interview and he said C's get degrees, and I was like, well, truer words have never been spoken, Quinn.
Yeah. Tell you that from experience.
That's the bar. That is absolutely true.
I even slipped a few D's in there and got my degree. I don't know what
So
can I tell you my story about my career at University of Texas? I'll take us off the rails a little bit. My first semester at Texas, I scored a 1.3. And you have to have a 2.0 or you get kicked out. So I was on academic suspension. My second semester,
scholastic probation is what it's called.
Yeah. So then I was my second semester, 3.9. My third semester, 1.5. My fourth semester, 3.85. My parents are like, dude, you know you can get it done. Clearly, dummy. So like maybe just try a little harder on those other semesters, because I dip below and get on probation, Alex, and I bring it up, dip below, bring it up, dip below. And I won't tell this story, but one time I was also on disciplinary probation at the same time I was on academic probation for just say I got to get popped on campus for doing something I should not have been doing.
And that's how you met your wife. Go ahead, Jason. Tell us the story.
There it is. Sounds like that needs to be the subject of a modcast some week. The Jason
Someday I'll
Sukumel,
tell that story, yeah, but not today.
The Jason Sukumel yo-yo degree, and what got him put on disciplinary probation.
Yeah, let's just say it was during a big football game, and I spent it in the UT Police Department getting interrogated. So,
damn, Jason.
Like one of those.
It's not as bad as it sounds, Anwar. But
it sounds good though. Whatever it is, sounds like you had a great time.
It's like a fun time. Yeah, that's all I know. We're having a good time on the
bot. Orange Bloods. He was the culprit on that. He came down to visit me, and we got in trouble. So.
Whose fault was that again?
Oh, it's Turkey Leg is his handle on Orange Bloods.
There you go. Yeah. Turkey Leg, you know that was you. We're having a good time on the Modcast today, talking about Sark's press conference. Spring football is on the way. We'll get back to one of the things that jumped out to me in the presser. I want to ask Anwar about this. But first, let's talk about drinking, and that is specifically the Deep Eddy Vodka Tasting Room. Great spring weather going on right now, depending on the day. Double check that. Get good spring weather. Get out there. Have yourself some great barbecue along with it. They got a barbecue food truck right there that is excellent. Crimson Creek Smokehouse Barbecue. They've got these cocktails that I have tried, and they have brand new ones with pineapple. I've not been out there since Pineapple Deep Eddy Vodka debuted. Oh, I've got a bottle of it. Don't worry. I'm doing my own taste testing, but I haven't checked out their cocktails yet. Get on out there. Find out what they're doing at the tasting room when it comes to pineapple. There are 9 flavors of Deep Eddy vodka now. Make sure you're doing it responsibly, of course. Get your DD or your ride share set up. That's how I do it when I go to the Deep Eddy vodka tasting room. Made myself thirsty. Anwar, the question I had for you is pretty simple. I thought a question was asked of Sark that teed him up to brag on Brandon Harris, and he didn't do it. What did you make of the early, and I'm going to get to your question later, the early GM kind of question? It just felt like a perfect setup, and he never said Brandon Harris's name. Did that surprise you a little bit?
No, because Sark doesn't mention anybody's name. You know, that's just not what he does, and you don't see him, you know, just always going out of his way to mention what people on the staff does. It's a different approach. It's not to say Sark doesn't value his staff members or he doesn't value what they do, but, you know, you got to think about, you would see like Tom Herman, and before, like every Big 12 media day, not before, but during every Big 12 media day, he would go through the sheet of Yancey McKnight and all the gains that they made in the offseason. And he'd start going, just rattling off all these numbers. You know, we deadlift this, we squat this, we've done these things. Like, and it was just on and on and on and on, right? And so that's what he would talk about, those guys. He would talk about, you know, his staff members and support staff members and things like that. And for all the years that he's been here, it's very rare where there's just an unsolicited comment about someone on the staff. You know, that's just how it is. He just doesn't come out and say unsolicited, I think my guys do these particular things. So it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't mention Brandon Harris, but we know Brandon Harris is valuable. I mean, Brandon Harris doesn't need to get mentioned, but he sure knows he's going to be making over half a mil. So I think at that point, if you're him and you're making 600,000, I mean, do you need the pat on the back, or you just wait for that first check to clear at this point? So, you know, I think it's much to do about nothing. I did hear you guys talk about it yesterday. I think Brandon Harris has value. I think you can't say that he works 18 hours a day, but then he needs to still be doing more. Well, clearly he's doing enough if the run is, and everyone's saying he's one of the hardest workers out there. So I don't make anything of it, just because it's it's not like he went out of his way and mentioned anything of what typically as relates to his coaches or support staff.
Yeah,
it's like
it.
Sorry.
He said, he just said, hey, I hire good people that I trust and we think alike. And I want them to kind of know how I think and what I would do. I can't remember Sark, like you said, Omar. I don't think I've ever heard him, and he probably has at some point, but Brandon or Taylor Searles or J.M. Jones, he just talks about his staff as a whole, right?
Yeah.
I know he mentioned Neil Brown yesterday briefly because Neil Brown.
Well, that's an introductory kind of setting.
Yeah, but exactly right, Alex. But that's just like Omar said. That's not his MO. I don't even understand why that was a talking point. I mean, he talked about his staff glowingly. Did he mention anybody specifically by name? But no, what's he gonna do? Go down the list and say, here's what this person does and this person, and then they're doing a great job. No, I mean, he raved about his staff collectively on the field and behind the scenes, guys and women. So I'm with Omar, man. I didn't think anything about that.
Rex St. Charles said the exact same thing I was thinking, man. As long as the checks don't bounce, it's like like he hired him for a reason. It reminds me of this. It reminds me back when I was playing music for a living, and we had just got signed by a major record label, right? Hollywood Records. It's owned by Disney, and our producer was this guy David Kahn. And David Kahn, you go into his office, and he's got like Paul McCartney's bass in there that he would use on his U.S. tours, and he has all these Grammys and all this stuff, right? Worked with all these people, and we're recording live to tape, right? We're recording live at Avatar Studios in New York City, high pressure stuff, right? You make one mess up, and the whole take's messed up for everybody. And I would come in there sometimes after a take, and I'd be like, "Was it okay?" And he'd be like, "Why do you keep asking me if it's okay? Would I have hired you if you're not gonna do it right?" It's just like at a certain point, you got to realize it. Like, you don't need the shout outs. You're hired for the job. They think that you're good at the job. You don't need the shout outs or the reinforcements or anything for anybody in a healthy relationship with somebody who's employing you, So like, I don't understand why it was a talking point either.
Interesting. Okay.
Because catch made it a talking point. That's why it became a talking point.
Well, him getting a big ass promotion speaks way more volumes than anything else, right? I mean, what else does he need?
I was going to say, Catch did find we talked about kind of a different angle of it, and we'll get to that because that's a side of it that we didn't necessarily talk about yesterday, but I like the fact that you guys hit that. We'll get another aspect of it as well. Speaking of Catch, he and I get you the House Divided show most days here in the noon slot. Let me give Hijack Poker a little love. And I'm going to ask Alec to tell his poker story about maybe beating Catch here in a second. Hijackpoker.com. Get that app on any device you want. You can deposit or cash out at any one of those 6 locations. They had a big tournament going on the other day that Catch was a part of. We tried to bring it to you on the show. You saw a little bit of what they do for you. Check out hijackpoker.com. Shout out to Texas Card House for being a great partner of ours. Alex, are the rumors true? Did you end up at a table with Jeff Ketchum on Hijack and take him down?
I didn't take him down. I thought I was at Catch's table for a little while. I certainly lasted longer than Catch. Didn't finish in the money. Man, it's been too long since I've done the online stuff. You got to be what I remember. And next tournament I hop in, I'll do it. You got to be really just aggressive with your continuation bets. And like anytime you enter a pot, you just got to aggressively c-bet. And that's too much of this bet check stuff, and you get blinded away like that. So I'll do better next time. No excuses. Play like a champion today.
There it is.
Check out what any of that means that you just said.
Hijackpoker.com. You might see Alex or Jeff Ketchum or both at a table. You never know. So Anwar, let me go back to you because I want you to frame this up for everybody, tying in kind of the discussion, the early discussion there with Brandon Harris. And let me be clear, when I brought it up, I wasn't necessarily saying that I thought Sark should mention Harris to give Harris the love. I thought maybe if he was going to do it, it was to discuss this whole, because there's this notion, I guess, out there of Sark doing a whole lot of things. And does he have people to help take certain things off his plate and delegate, that kind of stuff? So Anwar, take me to your last question for Sark and kind of how that played out, because I thought it was a really cool way to end this press conference. I thought he was super honest in his answer. So walk me through kind of how you decided to lay that out for him in terms of, you know, the work he was going through, I guess, in December, however you phrased it, but set it up for us and then we can discuss kind of where he went.
Well, no one can ask a question quite like Terry Middleton, right? So we're all fighting.
In the words of the great Steve Winwood,
we're all fighting for second place when it comes to following him. I do appreciate the craftsmanship that Terry puts in his questions, because clearly he's sitting there for days and days thinking about what he's going to ask and the correlations he's going to make. So I can't ask it like that. However, I do know that Sark is the type of person that you kind of have to outline the question for him so he understands what direction it's going. If he views it that it's going to be something that's super negative, especially in the season when he's a little agitated, it can go south. I don't know if you guys have ever seen him get into a back and forth with anybody in the media during the regular season, like me. So I outlined it for him so he could see where we're going. And I had to be specific that when you look at the months of December and January, you had high school signing day, you had the transfer portal, you had the SEC championship, you also had the playoffs that you had to deal with. You had the guys who were showing up on campus late December that were high school students, and so basically managing that. And I wanted to know how you avoid the burnout portion of that. He didn't answer necessarily the burnout portion of it, and he did kind of talk about how, while it was fun, but it was also kind of a nightmare as well. And he kind of also brought up something that we had known about, but he did focus in on for a little while, which was when their season ended, Cotton Bowl was over, there was that 5-day window where guys can enter the transfer portal, and how they were having to work on the retention portion of that and how challenging that was to make sure guys didn't leave. Seemed like that was more of a challenge more so than anything else that he had mentioned. Now, in that regard, if we nitpick the answer, he could have said like, okay, but I had these guys do all these particular things. I think he's mentioned something about, the day before signing day, how he had to make phone calls as opposed to be watching, certain film or specific things. Well, at the end of the day, respectfully, every coach the day before signing day has to make phone calls to make sure that their guys are coming. Like that's not the day that you hand it off to, somebody else. Like if you're going to seal the deal, you do have to seal the deal with the head coach to make sure to do the quick check-ins. That's not the day that you hand it off to the person who, is the third person in the recruiting department and making sure that that person is good and feeling the love. So Sark does what every coach did across the country, which is, you had to make those phone calls. And again, these are, what do you call it? Crying from a yacht. These are first world problems that he's talking about. So I think I just think the notion that Sark is doing too much and the notion that Brandon Harris has to do more is a thing that doesn't exist. I think Sark he's a hard worker, but I think his staffers is a group of hard workers, but I don't view it as Sark is doing everything. It's impossible to do everything. And if you look at the number of staff members that he has, it shows that he's not doing everything. Kirby Smart is doing everything, and Kirby Smart doesn't have a GM. So we're talking about something different. But I've outlined what has been done behind the scenes by Brandon and his sports staff. And so I feel like, once again, respectfully, much ado about nothing as relates to Sark overworking and maybe, doing everything and everything. Yes, he does have a final say-so and everything, but when he delegates and lets his people handle it.
Yeah. By the way, Rex is starting to think that it's just about me and Ketch starting this stuff up. Chad, the notion is only on your show. No other show in the Longhorn Online universe has ever brought up that notion that Sark is overworked. Rex, thank you for the comments. So when Anwar, and I'll ask all you guys, the three of you, when he laid the line out about, would I have rather been dealing with third down stuff, but I had to call 20 guys? Was that
I think
like,
on that one specifically, Chad, let me jump in.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Because he was preparing for the SEC championship game that same week, that signing day. So he was kind of, but he also said, hey, I'd rather be in this position than other people's positions.
Mhm.
But Almore's right. I mean, every coach is calling every committed guy the day before signing day just to make sure. But he's saying, hey, the schedule's kind of weird because we're trying to still coach a football game. I'd rather be watching film, but I'm having to do this. Like, because he said he liked that they moved signing day up, but I don't know, maybe they need to move it up even a bit further. But they're just trying to cram so much between portal and transfers and signing day and playoffs and conference championship games all into a 1 month span. It's just almost overwhelming.
I mean, Kirby Smart made phone calls the day before signing day, right? I mean, it wasn't like Sark was calling guys to seal the deal, and Kirby was like, "I know I got a game, but you know what? I'm not going to do. I'm not going to worry about this 2025 class. Like, I'm going to let everybody else do that, and I'm just going to focus on red zone packages on how to stop Texas, right? That's not necessarily it. Every coach had to do it, right? Every coach has to do it. Texas lost, and I know that you make some correlations as far as what things look like in December and red zones and all these kind of things. You know, I don't think Texas, the issue that Texas had or Sark had was a lack of preparation due to all the things that he's doing on campus. You know, okay. Texas lost for a variety of reasons. I don't think I don't want to put it on him, but it's not Texas's fault that they couldn't have a field goal kicker that can make a kick that could do something to help them out. Like, you know, is that a Texas thing? Is there so there's other factors and variables that, and I think inevitably we went into it. I think it's so easy to focus in on the one thing that seems to be the issue. And maybe he does work hard and does work a lot of hours, as do most college coaches, by the way. Like, this isn't the days of Tony Dungy saying we're all leaving the office at 5 o'clock and we'll be back tomorrow. Go spend time with your family. All these guys are working there and burning the midnight oil. Sark is no different, but I think at the end of the day, they've gone to the playoffs the last 2 years and they've gone to the semifinals the last 2 years. It's not like this program's in shambles and they have to like desperately figure out how to rebuild it. They've just got to figure out how to fine tune a couple of different things.
That's what we do, Omar. We nitpick in, not us, but just the Longhorn universe in general. And listen, I get it. Okay. Red zone issues. Well, your kicker stunk. The point, you didn't score a lot of points. Your kicker got worse as the year went on. Here's news. You're also playing pretty good defenses once you get into the college football playoffs, right? It's kind of like, it's like a Major League Baseball hitter. You get in the playoffs, you're like, oh, you're in a slump. Well, yeah, I'm facing freaking ace pitchers every single night out in the playoffs. I mean, those numbers are going to come down. Could they be better? Of course. And Sark said, hey, we've just got to be better in the red zone. He addressed that. But, I'm kind of like you, man. I think maybe we're blowing some of this stuff up.
And you got to pick. We can't. Here's the deal. You can't pick and choose, right? You can't pick and choose and say, okay, well, all right, there was a struggles in the SEC championship game. That was an issue, but then they were winning in the playoffs, right? Winning against Clemson and wins against Arizona State, right? And you're like, well, they had a little bit more time to prepare. Okay, you can say that, right? But it's either a problem or it's not, right? It's either he's working too hard, and this is just the reason why Texas lost one game during the regular season. Like, wow, and made it to the playoffs. Like, damn it, man. What a horrible sham of what we're dealing with. As opposed to, you know what? Is that the real reason? Like, it's a tough sell for me.
Hey, one more, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I know I'm going to bounce back and forth, Chad. I'll let you say. In one comment we haven't addressed that I thought Sark said, he goes, "Hey, I don't think it's a problem, me doing all these different things or having my hand in being the GM, not being the GM, but I forget how, kind of overseeing so many things." He goes, if it comes to a point where I feel like it's a problem, I'm not so prideful that I won't admit it. I'll admit, hey, it's too much. I will hand off some of these duties. So, Sark, he said repeatedly, hey, you've got to evolve. You've got to change. He said, I'm not, so arrogant that I can't admit if something's too much for me because I don't feel that way right now. If I do, I'll make that change.
Well, I think the other key ingredient here, guys, to go to his, problems from a yacht or whatever, if you're in the yacht and you see another yacht and they've got something you don't have, it's also a part of, wait, do I need that? Alex, there's also
if you stay with that, Ohio State doesn't have a GM and Georgia doesn't have a GM. So if you're looking from the yacht and you say something you don't have, well, those guys don't have a GM.
Okay, that would be interesting if that's right. If those kind of programs don't have a GM, I think that's a separate discussion. Where I was headed, Anwar, was to the Jim Nagy discussion. I think Oklahoma adding Nagy sort of helps this conversation get fired up a little bit. And Alex, my question that I just don't know how Sark would answer it, and he didn't really get asked this at the presser, but if someone asked him, "Hey, Oklahoma just got Jim Nagy to be their GM. Do you need one of those?" Would Sark's answer be, "No, not right now. We're good." Or would his answer be, "I got one of those. His name is Brandon Harris"? That's what I'm not.
It's two different skill sets. There are things that Brandon Harris is probably a ton better than Nagy at. Nagy's going to be a ton better than Brandon Harris at finding, offensive line guys from Humboldt State that have NFL futures. It's like,
that I think has been the distinction that Ketch has been making about these two guys have different strengths. They do different jobs in his mind. And he's just saying at some point, he thinks Sark might need to consider hiring the type of guy that's going to do what Nagy's going to do for OU. Yeah.
The Nagy, I think the Nagy hire has been an awesome hire. I think Brandon Harris has been an awesome GM for Texas. It's like, it's like you got two. I go to the, I don't eat really ice cream and stuff really anymore because it's so bad for you. But like, I like all the ice cream at the ice cream shop. There's none that I really don't like. If it's like good enough to be in the shop, it's going to be good. Like these guys are employed at really good universities and they've done a good job. And I think that their records, Brandon Harris's record, what he's done at Texas speaks for itself. Jim Nagy's what he's done with the Senior Bowl. His record speaks for itself. If he goes around to Tennessee Tech and all these places like that, and he can find this guard that's going to be at the Senior Bowl next season, and he's like, dude, we'll give you $100K to come to Oklahoma, and you're gonna have a chance to start. That's a big deal. Texas could use some of that on their interior offensive line right now, and they could get it in the spring portal window.
You don't think Kyle Flood knows as much as Jim Nagy about, you got to lean on
going out, absolutely, about going out and finding these guys and knowing who the scouts are talking about at Humboldt's
evaluating offensive line
or Tennessee Chattanooga. No, it's like it isn't about the evaluation, Jason. It's about just knowing where they are. It's just about knowing who they are. It's
maybe
just
getting them in front,
having them on your radar. It's like the evaluation piece.
You're saying he's going to go find guys to tamper with that aren't in the portal and get them to enter the portal.
Yes, he's going to be very good at it.
You're probably not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, just remember, if Nagy's expertise is scouting. Well, I mean, Texas did finish with the #1 recruiting class, so I would from a technical standpoint, Texas seems to be pretty good as relates to scouting. They also
you're assuming that the people who do those rankings.
I'm talking more. I'm talking portal finds that help you where you really need to be helped right now, and that's with making sure that your twos at least are very good, because we know that in college football right now, the parity that we're seeing is because of the transfer portal at the higher levels. It's like your twos are getting sniped by the lesser schools where they can be ones. And it's like, if you can find a way to make sure that your twos and your foundation, at least in your competition there on the 2 deep, is going to be guys that are going to have NFL interest. Those are the kind. All Nagy's whole world is just NFL scouts talking with these guys. It's like that's his whole world. He knows he knows that there's some wide receiver at Princeton that's a sophomore that they're all in love with. I think it's been most important about the offensive line. That's where he's been best with it. That's obviously where I put a lot of emphasis. I think it's very important to have a super, super strong 2 deep there. And so it's a kind of a niche thing that I'm talking about that I think Nagy is going to really I don't think he brings any. He's going to need to figure out how to manage a salary cap. It's not like he's ever done that. It isn't like he's ever recruited high school guys. That the one thing you could point to with Nagy that he's recruited guys to do is like, it's a different kind of recruiting, but talking to Baker Mayfield to coming into the Senior Bowl, tell him why it's important, getting these guys to come to the game, it's a little bit of a recruiting job. Some of them, the Senior Bowl sells itself. For some of them, with guys who think they're going to go super high anyway, he wants them at that game. He wants them there in the city of Mobile. He wants to make money for the city, make money for the game, keep it as high profile as possible. So, I mean, he's done a little bit of recruiting. I don't think it translates exactly to recruiting high school players. And I also don't think that he has the connections with like high school coaches and things like that are necessary to recruit well at the high school level. What I do think that he has better than anybody else is a network of scouts and a network of evaluation people, especially some of these places where you can find these rare finds. And I think that there's extreme value in that, given what I was talking about as far as the parity and you getting your twos constantly picked off by the teams that have less.
I think the thing is, Alex, not disagreeing with you, just kind of taking it in a different direction as relates to that. And look, and you guys have done this long enough, and Jason can attest to this. The moment the hidden gem tweets out, I'm blessed to receive an offer from the University of Oklahoma, he is no longer a hidden gem. And now he's on everybody's radar. And now you move into the realm of NIL, and trying to figure out what to do with that, So, so it's
if I were Nagy, I wouldn't. You're right. That's exactly right. If I were Nagy, I mean, that's probably good advice to him. Like he probably, if he's going to warn him, he's like, dude, it's $200K. Take
exactly
right now.
Because the moment you say it, you're no longer hidden. And everyone's like, oh wait, who the hell did this guy offer? Oh, okay, well, let's go ahead and offer him as well. And so I think
we didn't even know he was in the portal. Like, we were on him too. We just didn't know. Yeah.
Well, and also, just an interesting note here. I don't even know what this means, but to Anwar's point earlier, if we're sitting here on this Tuesday when we're recording the show on March 11th, and Texas and Oklahoma have GMs, but Georgia and Ohio State don't, it's just kind of interesting. I know one of them just won it all, and then one of them just had a back-to-back before that, but it'll be interesting to watch the landscape, because we all know it becomes copycat stuff that, now you can add just about anything you want to these staffs and the support staff.
Can I just say that just real quick at this moment, Oklahoma's not on Texas's level.
I agree with that. Totally agree.
They're not on Texas's level. Like they're a rival in name. The Oklahoma's been blown out of 2 out of the last 3 games. Like Texas is literally competing for the playoffs at this moment and competing for a national championship. Oklahoma is literally has a coach who's at this point could get fired after this season. So I get it, and it's cool, and it's good conversation, but Oklahoma hasn't even proven if you get the guys in, can you develop them? Like they had a 5-star quarterback they had to show the door to, so, or that he wanted to get out the door. So, I just don't think at this moment, the conversation is fun. I'm not going to, deny the conversation can't be fun or engaging. But OU is just not on Texas's level at this moment. They're just Texas is competing against the Georgias and Ohio States of the world, and the conversation should be, what do those programs do? Not necessarily what Oklahoma is doing.
Yeah, now that argument is sound, because Anwar, not just about the game. The game in Dallas is obviously critical, but just the neighborhood OU finds themselves in the SEC after year one. If I had told you guys that, obviously, if I told you Bama, Georgia, Texas, you'd be nodding. But then I said, and Tennessee will be better than them, and A&M's going to be better than them. Oh, and Arkansas is going to be better than them. Did I mention
Vanderbilt?
Did I mention Missouri's going to be better than them, and Vandy's going to be? I mean, you just listed all out in your
Carolina.
head. You're like South Carolina, right? And then if I tell you that the only reason they're a blip on last year's radar is that they won a game against Alabama that really said more about Alabama than it did them, and that was their second conference win. I mean,
they got beat. No disrespect, but maybe it is disrespect. I mean, they got beat by Navy in a bowl game, right? I mean, like what are we? I mean, what are we really talking about? Like, again, it's. I just feel like, again, rivalry standpoint, it sounds good, but they are middle of the pack to bottom of the pack SEC team at this moment.
Yeah,
And the teams that win in the SEC, the team that are top heavy with talent, and those teams that that first 22 is studs. And Texas's backups are probably better than some of these, the guys at Oklahoma starters. Like they've got 5-stars who, you got Parker Braun, who was a 5-star that's just sitting and waiting what see what it's going to do. You got 5-star receivers that were like, well, let's see if which one of these guys get the field, this season, which one of those guys going to be the ones that sit, right? So it's interesting, but they're just different levels to it.
All right, so let's maybe round it out this way. Just as a quick follow-up on War, if Georgia or Ohio State adds a position like a GM and that person's got serious NFL type of experience, then do you think maybe more than just Jeff Ketchum and me might ask, hey, would Texas consider something like that? Like, is it going to happen if one of those big dogs makes a move?
I mean, you guys will do whatever show you want to, right? So I can't. No one's going to
what we'll do.
That.
What we'll do.
And, if Catch feels like he's right about something, we worked with him long enough to know that he's not going to relent. So
I have no idea what you're talking about.
At the end of the day, Texas is one of the big boys in college football. I mean, they were in the semifinals, and they have been for the past 2 years. I think Sark will say he's got the formula. He's doing the right thing. Now, I think the better question, more so than that, is if 2 years from now or 3 years from now, Brandon Harris decides that he's going to leave for the NFL because he did turn down an assistant GM position. If he decides to leave, what will be Sark's move? Yeah. I don't think Sark will be reactionary to what other people do, but what he decides to do if he loses a guy, that will be, I think, what's interesting, because Sark is. I mean, you guys know Sark long enough. Like, he hired Kenny Baker. He didn't go and hire a guy that said, I have this long college resume. He just hired him because he felt like that was the right guy for the job. He hired Chris Jackson. That's not a guy who was a college recruiter or anything like that. Now he evolves into recruiter of the year, right? Sark is his own man. And I think Sark looks at things and he gets advice from NFL people, but I don't hear Sark really talk about college people who are his boys, that's the guy that he leans on too much, So yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting what would happen if Brandon leaves, what he would decide to do. I mean, that I don't know.
All right, is the Modcast on this Tuesday. We'll head for the door here in just a second. Real quick, let me thank Sinus and Snoring Specialists for being a great partner of ours. And certainly they've helped me, and they have helped a lot of people. I heard a story recently about a woman who had really bad sleep apnea, and it affected lots of parts of her life, including like memory loss and things like that. I've said to you guys before, if you let these things get worse, it could lead to even worse stuff. So here's the bottom line. If you know you have sleep apnea and you just haven't gotten it taken care of, you got to get it taken care of. If you're snoring like crazy, or somebody in your bed partner is snoring like crazy, you got to get that taken care of. Sleep apnea means you stop breathing a lot. There's a certain amount of that's allowed. There's a moderate amount that I had that's not good. There's a severe version of it that my wife had that's really not good. If we had just let it continue, my wife's gotten it dealt with, I've got it dealt with, and we're sleeping better. We feel better. We're breathing better. Just that basic stuff that sometimes we don't think about enough. Get it taken care of at Sinus and Snoring Specialists. They've been doing this well over 20 years. Dr. Slaughter will meet you in the first consultation and take you through your process. 601-0303. You can securely text them on that number and call, or you can go to sinussnoringent.com. I swear by them, you will too. Sinus and Snoring Specialists. Feel clear, rested, and healthy. Always an important part of it. All right, Modcast on a Tuesday. Fellas, anything else from the Sark presser y'all want to hit before we get out of here? Did we cover it all?
Covered it all.
Yeah, we did. We went a whole
Okay.
show and didn't talk about Arch. That's amazing.
We did not. See there? We did
Yeah.
that.
We don't
All
have
right,
to talk about it, but I just that's pretty interesting.
I won't get y'all a full batch. I just want a quick little buy or sell here on another sport, and then we'll get out of here. It is a one buy or sell day. If there is a new men's basketball coach at Texas next year, you've heard a name that you like. You don't even have to give me the name, but you've heard a name that you like for the job. Anwar, let me start with you. Buy or sell?
Sell. I haven't heard a name, so
Okay.
I haven't gone down that rabbit hole to see what's out there. I've focused mainly on watching the women's because it's been more fun and
That has been a lot better. Alex, buy or sell?
Yeah, it was little bit. The first half was a little bit tough on Saturday. Was that Sunday or
Sunday for the women's?
Sunday with South Carolina. Yeah.
No, I don't know anything. People don't want to hear me talk about basketball. I don't know a thing about it. I have no idea.
I'm just asking. I don't know, Alex. You know, you're on a hunting trip. You're out fishing. You're cooking up some great meat from Texas beef traders, and somebody gives you a little piece of info
about that. I'd love to talk about those things, but I don't know about the new men's coach, man. I'm sure CDC will find somebody good.
Okay, Jason, what do you think?
I mean, like Alex and Almar, I don't pay a whole lot of attention. I mean, Will Wade was a name that came across my phone last week. Former LSU coach. I think he's at McNeese State right now. Quinn Snyder's a name that's been floating around. I don't know if there's any validity there. You know, Will Wade, everybody's like, show cause. Well, that's lifting. The dude wins. And what he was doing, wasn't great, but like it's pretty much legal now. You know, so I mean, NIL, with NIL, if the guy can win, I think you can overlook a lot of past warts, if you will. So that's the one name that I've heard. I don't know how valid it is or legit it is, but you know, somebody with LSU connection said, hey, they've heard that and they thought there were some legs to it, but that's certainly not my expertise. But yeah, go get Will Wade. If the guy can win, he's young. He's won everywhere he's been. Let's do it.
There's a certain section of basketball coaches that I put like in the Kelvin Sampson and Bruce Pearl category. It's like, well, what if everything that they did that was terrible wasn't terrible anymore?
Those dudes win everywhere they go.
Right? What then? What happens then? Maybe just basketball happens at that point. All right. Thank you all for liking, subscribing, and getting those notifications. Over 700 of you in the Specs chat as we get ready to close up. Remember, Football with Friends, Alex and Cody, this evening at 6. Tomorrow morning at 9, the old fashioned with Anwar Richardson. And then Jason and I will have the recruiting hour tomorrow at 10. We may find a way to talk about Mr. Ojo because he's kind of important. And we'll hit some other big notes as well. So thank you for your support. Y'all have a good rest of your Tuesday. We are the Modcast.